don't want their kids to be successful. Parents are just not sending their kids to school. And that is not the case. A lot of times when you make phone calls and visit homes, you understand that it's a lot more to that. The pandemic really just broke up the rhythm of school.
The fact that you mentioned that it's from the lower economic zones, I think you also mentioned transport, you mentioned safety, you mentioned healthcare, and even childcare to a certain degree. When you look at all these major issues, they're beyond school boundaries. Which one do you want to pick
I
up?
think all of them are equally important and we have to address them all. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about school and district. Yeah, we're a large part of that.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. There's a quite crisis unfolding in the cities across America, a crisis of empty desks. Chronic absenteeism isn't just a number. It's a critical indicator of student well-being and future success. Today, we are going to deep dive on this issue with a leader from the front lines of one of the nation's largest school districts. We will join by Will C. Pickens, Deputy Chief of Schools for Chicago Public Schools, who has served the children of Chicago at every level. Well, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
We would love to start from your journey. How did it begin? How did from counselor to principal to now deputy chief of schools? How has it been like?
Yeah, it's actually been excellent. I actually fell into education by accident. I was actually heading to law school and had an opportunity to shadow an attorney and realized that's not what I wanted to do. And I was just in a state of ambivalence, wasn't sure. And my mother introduced me to a principal who she had previously worked for. And then the rest is history. I had an opportunity to teach reading and then went directly into counseling, principal, deputy superintendent in South Carolina, and now here in Chicago, one of the deputy chiefs of schools. And the most rewarding experience. I've had an opportunity to work across several states and engage several communities. And so this is really, I don't consider it work. I really consider it a calling.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah.
love the fact that you went from being a lawyer to being in schools because as a profession, I'm pretty sure that pays a lot more. But this is something which we are more passionate about, and it just gives back to the society a lot more in the sense that we're shaping up the next generation of students coming in.
Absolutely, for sure. Now, I wasn't a lawyer. I was heading, just for clarification, I was heading right to law school. Didn't go to law school. I think everybody has their own gifts and talents, but mine just wasn't law school. It's not something that I wanted to do after just seeing someone who was an attorney. But glad that I chose this route. And I just hope that I've been good to the communities who have been good to me.
Absolutely. So when we look at absenteeism, we look at empty desks. What is the biggest misconception that the public and perhaps even educators have? Why is a student chronically absent in something like as big of a city and a district like Chicago?
Yeah, so I think the biggest misconception is parents don't want their kids to be successful. Parents are just not sending their kids to school. And that is not the case. A lot of times when you make phone calls and visit homes, you understand that it's a lot more to that, whether it's housing, whether it's transportation, whether it's healthcare. The reasons most often that kids are staying home, a lot of times they're valid reasons. And until you get a chance to know those things and hear those things, you're not able to help solve the problem. But the biggest misconception is that, parents may not care about their students and are just not sending them to school. And that's just often not the case. There's often a larger problem in hand that the student and the family is working through that's preventing them from coming to school. And schools and the community have to have a really proactive approach to addressing chronic absenteeism.
And I guess this problem has only increased post-pandemic. the school contract of schooling and how the daily habit of attendance. Because before that, we never heard absenteeism discussed to the levels which we are discussing right now. From your perspective, what was the long-term impact it has, and how do you build a routine back in the place?
Yeah. So actually, that's a great question. And believe it or not, prior to the pandemic, chronic absenteeism was still an issue. I think, not I think I know what the pandemic did. It really just exacerbated um, chronic absenteeism, particularly from students from low income communities. And so even prior to the pandemic, it was still an issue.
Yeah.
Um, and the pandemic just really brought it to the surface. And I think that students now are getting back into a routine of coming to school. This chronic absenteeism still an issue for sure, but now I think their rhythm is coming back. The pandemic really just broke up uh, the rhythm of school, and it brought other things to play, socioeconomics, housing, health, which made which created even more barriers for students to not to attend. And then also remember that there was a time where students were not, we were not allowed to go to school,
Yeah.
and so that threw them off even more. Now, students are back. There's no, for the most part, there's no social distancing. Students aren't required to wear a mask. Things are coming back to pre-pandemic levels. But the pandemic really just accelerated chronic absenteeism for students, particularly those from low socioeconomic backgrounds. But it was always there. It was just, it's talked about more a little bit now.
The fact that you mentioned that it's from the lower economic zones, I think you also mentioned transport, you mentioned safety, you mentioned healthcare, and even childcare to a certain degree. When you look at all these major issues, they're beyond school boundaries. Which one do you want to pick up? How do you pick up? What ones do you choose?
Uh, Oh my goodness. I I think all of them are equally important, and we have to address them all. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about schools and districts. Yeah, we're a large part of that, but we need the community and the community supports in order to help solve this problem. And I give us statistics. When you think about from birth to age 18, including summer, holidays, weekends, sleep time, a student spends roughly 15 to 18% of their time in school. That's it, 15 to 18% from birth to 18. That is, it's a lot of time, but not really.
Yeah.
You think it's more times being spent in school, but actually the majority of time students are really, in the community and at home. And it just signifies the importance of the community to help solve this problem, which often is dropped, at the doorsteps of schools, and we're asked to solve it. But there are plenty of community partners and nonprofits that are willing to help research based and give schools opportunities to shrink their chronic absenteeism rates.
So I'm going to break it down into two different angles. The first angle is, what are the systems in place that you've built in, say, for Chicago public schools that are used all across schools? And what is that one community partnership that you have done which has seen real good results? And how do you put it across, say, one family? If you could give me an example for the same.
Yeah. So I'll start with the systems, as you said. Right now, every school has a team that is identified, that talks about, that knows which students are chronically absent. They have tier one, tier two, tier three interventions in place. There's a team that is looking at the data for students who are missing school. That's first and foremost. Um, a nonprofit that all schools have been introduced to is Attendance Works. And Attendance Works isn't just for Chicago Public Schools, or it's a national organization that works with school district states. And it has the thing that I love about Attendance Works is that it has toolkits, it has case studies, it has everything that a school needs in order to move the needle for chronic absenteeism. You can literally pick up the resources from Attendance Works, adjust it to your school or to your district, put it in place, implement it, monitor it, and then just see the results from there. And so when I was a deputy superintendent in Chester, South Carolina, we did the same approach. Attendance Works. Every school had an attendance support team that focused on students who were chronically absent or approaching chronically absent and the most chronically absent. And the reason I share Chester, South Carolina is because the same approaches and systems that were leveraged in South Carolina are some of the same approaches and systems that are leveraged here in Chicago, research-based, tried and true, because they work. And as far as community partners, there are a lot of them. Each school has their own specific partners that help with tutoring and mentoring. But just on a large scale, our schools use Attendance Works. And last but not least, we have an Attendance Works consultant who actually works for Chicago Public Schools, who helps schools with implementation. And ultimately, our principals understand that it is important. It's an issue that's large and that we have to solve, but there are ways and methods to solve them.
Absolutely. And it's super fascinating because Chester, South Carolina, the district size versus the Chicago Public School, the district size is a little different, if I have to put it polite.
Yeah, you're right. So one has roughly 6,000 students, 13, 14 schools. The other one has over 600 students. I mean, over 600 schools, 350 some thousand students. But the strategies, the resources, the research, the practices are almost identical because they work. And Attendance Works is just the premier, the gold standard for principals in schools and districts to use to help move the needle for chronic absenteeism. But you have to have a team, and you have to know which students are approaching being chronically absent, and you have to have a plan in place for those students and be more proactive opposed to reactive.
And this just made me think, right? Like with the 600 schools that Chicago has, would you at the district level pass something and tell everyone to do the same things, or would you let the principals decide how they would want to react? Because I'm guessing each one is in a different neighborhood, different locality, different people, kids coming in, different backgrounds as well. So would you how is the structure there? Like, would you give them systems and things they should be doing and they choose what to do versus, hey, this is one thing, we will go to do it all across our district?
It's an excellent question. So first, let me back up. Chicago is very large, third largest district, so large that there are 17 different networks,
Yeah.
and each network is essentially a large district. And while we try to have some things that are somewhat ubiquitous across Chicago public schools, um, uh, each network has the autonomy to do some things differently, right? Things that are based on uh, research that are tried and true and battle tested, but there's not a specific directive or demand from the district to all schools, other than chronic absenteeism is an issue. We have a team that's will get you the data. We have the most sophisticated dashboards in Chicago public schools where real time principals and schools are able to see which students are chronically absent, which students are approaching, leverage that data to then inform decisions. So we have dashboards that are available to all schools. We have central office leaders who focus on attendance, who can help networks and help schools move the needle. So schools have resources, but there's not necessarily a demand from our CEO superintendent to say, hey, you must do it this way. But there is a push for us to decrease chronic absenteeism in our networks.
And
And go ahead.
sorry,
No. You first. You're asking the great questions.
no, it's just when you said data and the dashboards, right? Uh, is there a particular tool that you guys are using? Is there something which you guys rely on more often than the others?
Yeah, we have a dashboard, and I don't know who is it. Cisco. I'm not sure who's powering our dashboard, but it's very sophisticated in that it breaks it down. You can see the students who are chronically absent, students who are approaching. You see the various schools, their levels. And one thing that I like about it is that it breaks it down into demographics, because sometimes we have a certain demographic of students who miss school more. And we have to know which groups those are so that we can better support them. So the dashboard is it's really a tool that any principal, any district leader can go into and see real time a school's chronic absenteeism and um, ADA rate too. But making sure that we break those up right. We understand that chronic absenteeism is different than ADA rate. So a school can have a high average daily attendance rate, but still have a lot of students who are chronically absent. Making sure that schools are aware of what those two things are, because they measure two different things.
That is for sure. And when we look at it from a like more granular perspective, I know because you were a principal yourself and you were like from a principal and the front lines perspective and even teachers perspective, what is it that they can do that implements something which works?
The first thing is do what the research is telling you to do, and that is have tier one, tier two, and tier three strategies in your school. So, for example, a principal and their team, first and foremost, has to have a team that focuses on chronic absenteeism, right? That's plain and simple. A principal and their team should be doing an attendance campaign that centers chronic absenteeism and coming to school. A principal and their team should be sending out letters and newsletters about the importance of coming to school and coming to school on time and the benefits of it. The principal and their team should have incentives for students who are coming to school regularly that excites them about coming to school. Some people say, we shouldn't have to provide students with incentives to have them to come to school. And I say, well, why not? Right? We are, to some degree, we are all incentivized by something, whether it's a paycheck, whether it's seeing somebody in the office. We all have that extrinsic motivation, and so do kids. And so principals understand that, and they provide those incentives that make school more enjoyable. Principals create the conditions not only for the students, but for the teachers. And then the same thing that the principals are doing to invite students into the school, the best and the brightest teachers are doing the exact same thing in their classroom. They're sending messages home to their parents about the importance of attendance. They're looking at their students who are missing school, and they're picking up the phone and calling to say, hey, where are you? Where have you been? We miss you. It's not punitive, but we need you back in the class. They're knocking on doors and visiting homes. So it's just it's an ecosystem of people who are using tried and true practices that work to decrease chronic absenteeism, but the principle really sets the tone. If the principle isn't centering chronic absenteeism, then a lot of times the message doesn't grow across the school.
That's true. I think so. I think having principal setting the tone, I think having superintendent set the tone, and then from there, each level has to do their part. And it comes down to the teachers to build that social connection and have that human touch, as we say it, for the kids to come back, even if it's incentivized, even if it's for the meal, even if it's for the sports or something else that they look forward to. And and this is where I look at, right? Like when we look beyond and we look to the next 5 years of how things are shaping up and what needs to happen, we also look at what is happening with the artificial intelligence. We look at the AI tutors which are coming in and some of the human element itself going away. So how do you look at, and it's a more varied question and a little away from absenteeism, in the sense of what's your viewpoint on the whole AI space? Are you looking actively forward towards it? Are you guys training teachers? Are you guys working on AI literacy for the students? Uh, and does that, just the access to information at such a vast level allows for more absenteeism to also take place and happen?
That's another great question. Yeah, so first and foremost, you said something. I want to go back to what you said. You said that superintendents really set the tone, and that's correct. I believe we have that going on here in Chicago. I've seen it happen in Detroit. We have Alberto Cavallo, who's now in Los Angeles, who was in Miami, who centers chronic absenteeism, who has a campaign across all of his schools, who uses research to really drive practices, who's using AI to really help move the needle. And so what we're doing is we're studying other leaders who are doing the work and um, who are seeing some success from it. So to answer your question specifically, AI is something that's here. It's not going anywhere. What we're doing in Chicago, we are making sure that we understand, what AI consists of. We're making sure that we're building our knowledge base of usage and how we can leverage AI while also simultaneously protect our students from the perils of it because they're there. But that doesn't mean that we just say that we're not going to leverage AI because I think that would be a detriment. So we're studying AI. We're building our knowledge base. On my team specifically, we have an instructional support leader who is certified in an AI program, and she's now teaching other team members about it. How can we leverage it other than Chat GPT, right? That's one tool uh, to leverage, but so we're embracing it here in Chicago. There's some unknowns of how we can protect our students, but we know that it's here and it's here to stay. And the I think you asked another question about the 5 year outlook
Yeah.
on just in general.
Your 5 year outlook on what would be the most impactful in education would look like, and how would you see it and envision it?
Wow, impactful. Wow. Mm. I think so. This is based on uh, the research, and when we think about student achievement, obviously the parent slash the community, they're important. I gave you that statistic earlier. But when we think about the two groups of people who um, qualitatively and quantitatively are helping to move student achievement is really your teachers,
Yeah.
and then behind your teachers is your principals. Those two are, I would say, the most important. Everybody else is important too. Let me say that. But when you think about your most important, if you had to rank up your parents, and then your CEO, your superintendent set the tone. But those two major levers are your principals and your teachers? And how do districts begin to support and pour into as much as possible those two groups of people, your teachers and your principals? I think if we continue to do that, um, we can get more successful outcomes for all students if we continue to support, provide professional development, provide opportunities for growth for teachers and principals. We will continue to move the needle. And then on a larger scale, I think there needs to be um, less arguing about school choice, right? And I may get in a little trouble for saying this, but that's okay. I think back to my experience in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools when at the time I was going to a school that just quite unfortunately it wasn't meeting my needs. It reminded me of a prison. I had a point 0.9 GPA, and there was opportunity within a district. It was a choice opportunity for my mother to send me to a school across town because she felt that it was better for me. I had to take an hour and a half bus ride there and then an hour and a half back. And then when I played sports, I didn't get home sometimes tonight. But that school was able to provide me with what I needed, and I flourished. I was successful, but it was a disparate experience from the school that I went to. I was only able to do that because my district offered choice. And if we really want to change the game in education, we will provide students with the option to go to a school that meets their needs, regardless of their zip codes. It is unfair when we say you have to live, sleep, go to school, and die in the zip code in which you were born. It just does not make any sense. How do we open this up for kids, particularly our most vulnerable, most fragile students, to go to schools that will support them and see them and hear them? If school districts can understand that choice is good, it's good for the economy, it's for free market, and school districts internally can provide choices to where kids aren't leaving the school district across the country. In most school districts, we're seeing a decline in enrollment.
Yeah.
But you're right, we're seeing that. But I really push anybody. You have some districts who are either holding steady or they're increasing. Study those districts and see what they're doing. They have some things in place that other districts don't, and I believe that's the secret sauce. But when we give opportunities for students to decide where they go to school, districts then become more attractive opposed to less less attractive. And the saying goes, people vote. People vote with their feet, right? They leave, they go to charters, they go to private, and if a parent decides to do that, that's okay. But I ultimately feel that public schools can offer all of those things internally to meet the needs of all students so that they're not leaving. If we can get that right, we'll see an increase in enrollment, I promise.
I think you answered one of the questions which I had, because there is a negative sentiment and there is nothing to hide about it. There is a negative sentiment towards public schools all across the United States, and it's just not one city, not one district, not one particular state that has more or less. It's all across. And I think choice is important. I think choice is something which first enables everyone to stand up and actually and it also puts pressure on the right places where every principal, every teacher has to stand up and actually deliver to the whole kids, just not to the top two version of it, and stick with those. I think I think even from your own personal story itself, it's so powerful. The fact that you ended up, and great kudos to your mom who took that decision, because 3 hours traveling every day as a kid is not easy. And I can imagine it must have taken a toll, specifically with the whole school, homework, and sports that you had to go through.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But I'm just grateful for the school district knowing that this is important, this can work, and me being able to uh, attend a different school, which changed ultimately the trajectory of my life. I'm not sure if I would be sitting here talking to you if my mother did not, in fact, make that decision. My mother and my father, but especially my mom, make that decision for me. And so the same decision that I had made for me, I want all students to be able to have that decision for them, because that's I think education is one of it's the greatest equalizer. So yes, and my perspective is broad, right? I've worked in traditional public schools, but I was also a principal of charter schools too. So I understand that good schools are good schools. And until everybody understands that, we're going to continue to have the back and forth, the charter versus the private, or the traditional charter schools versus public schools. We're going to have back and forth. It doesn't have to be this or that. It can be this and that.
Yeah,
We can do both.
absolutely. Thank you so much. I think this was very informational. It has been amazing to speak with you. So many insights. Absolutely loved it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on this platform. More to come.
For sure.
Thanks for tuning in. For more information about TomoClub, visit TomoClub or follow us on our socials. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.